So, as the saying goes, not your keys, not your coins.
If you can birth a child, you can self-custody. Like, the risk you're balancing is on one side you have third-party risk, and then the other side you have operational self-custody risk.
I'm really appreciative of these two fine gentlemen closing us out. Without any further ado, please join me in welcoming Matt Odell and Adam Back.
Thank you, Rod. Before we get started, I just wanted to let the record show that I like the BitKey. The recovery process is you download a PDF, and then if for some reason Square disappears, you download the APK that's on GitHub, and you scan the QR code on the PDF, and you're able to restore your funds. I've done the process. It's not like the most ideal process. I like Seeds better, but it gets the job done. It's very easy to use. Anyway, guys, we have the legendary Adam Back here with us. Can we get a round of applause for Adam? Adam, we're going to be talking about custody today. Do you know anything about that?
Okay, yeah. So, as the saying goes, not your keys, not your coins, and then we get into the details of how you manage your keys.
Yeah, so I mean, last cycle, I heard very frequently that not your keys, not your coins is FUD. And then FTX happened, and everyone realized that it was not FUD. But now we're 3 years later, and I feel like time is a flat circle, and we're kind of back where we started in a lot of ways with new people. So I think a good place to start, just real quick, is for the individual, why is the ability to self-custody Bitcoin so important?
Well, I mean, I think if you think about it, Bitcoin is providing kind of asset protection in the sense of it being hard for a third party to seize your assets. So you can think about that like in the US, your primary residence, if you live in the state of Florida, that is protected in a legal way, but an even stronger protection is you have the keys, then there's no pressure point that the court can go through other than you yourself to seize your assets preemptively. And unfortunately, that is actually a material consideration for some professions that are commonly on the receiving end of legal, like medical professionals, dentists. So they will actually go and make use of these legal asset protection mechanisms because they're going to get sort of frivolous court cases that try to seize their assets. And then, if you find yourself in the unfortunate position of being attacked by the government, if you were involved in some activist activity or running online privacy servers like Tor servers, remailers, step one in those kinds of things is they seize all your assets so that you can't afford a lawyer, so you're an easy target. So some of the early Bitcoin developers were thinking about this as well because it was very unclear what the legal status of Bitcoin was if developers could be targeted. So I think Barack Obama did actually the accidental best advertisement for why you should want to custody your own Bitcoin, which is, I think he was viewing it as a problem actually, but if you look online, there's a thing where he says that everybody's walking around with a Swiss bank account in their pocket, and like, yes, you got it. But he thought it was a problem, actually, and he wanted to stop it.
Yeah, I mean, it's actually way better than a Swiss bank now because they handed over a ton of information. So we have on the individual side, and I remember that Barack, it was, the whole Bitcoin community did like the Leo DiCaprio meme, like pointing with the beer in their hand. So on the individual side, I think more or less like it's become standard practice that when people come in, they understand the importance of self-custody. Like I said, FTX did help a lot on that front. But now we're seeing more and more businesses adopt Bitcoin as a treasury asset, as a savings vehicle for their free cash flow. But I think it's important not to group all businesses together, right? I think we're seeing a lot of small businesses adopt Bitcoin, and then we're seeing these large publicly traded Bitcoin treasury companies. So I'd like to start with on the small business side. If a dentist office, for instance, was coming to you, let's say a heavily profitable dentist office that was making like $1 million net a year, and they wanted to keep the majority of their free cash flow in Bitcoin, what would be your actionable recommendation for them in terms of how to custody that?
Well, get a hardware wallet and generate the seeds correctly, like on the hardware wallet, and back it up in a fireproof way, and put the seeds somewhere safe that a member of staff or somebody can't easily get to. And if it's an asset protection situation, you kind of want that to be a bit obscure so that it's not obvious to the authorities, because that's what happens to people is there were people that were, I guess, selling Bitcoin OTC for cash, and that was not approved at some point, so they sort of raid people's houses and take everything electronic and backup looking, and that could be a problem. So you've got to take that into account as well. So it's a little tricky sometimes to figure out where to store the backups, but if you're not really worried about the legal attack, at least make sure that it's not going to be somewhere that can be stolen easily. And I think if you want to go further, you can consider a multi-sig, like a 2 out of 3 multi-sig with 3 seeds, and back those up in different places. And the extra redundancy will protect you if you lose one of them, and use 3 different hardware wallet manufacturers so that if one of them has some horrible bug that nobody saw coming, you're still protected. So that's kind of the state of the art. It's a little bit complicated, which is, why you see the BitKey discussion, because usability is a factor. But I think, the counter argument to that is when people care about things, they can figure stuff out. Like, people can use computers. If they care about it, they can do a lot of things. So I think people can learn how to manage seeds. Okay.
I mean, the big one for me relatively recently was I became a father. Raising a child in childbirth, which I didn't do childbirth, my wife did, was incredibly impressive. Like, if people, I always say that if you can birth a child, you can self-custody. Like, every woman out there deserves a ton of. I know all the women in the world, all the mothers at least, can self-custody Bitcoin. I'm not sure about the men, but maybe we'll make it more usable for them. I just want to just drill into that for a second, because what I hear, because this is like, it's kind of combined on the individual and small business side. Like, the recommendations are almost very similar, right? It's self-custody, learn how to do it the right way, keep your backups offline, do proper cold storage, practice. But what I see a lot on both the individual and maybe even like the family office, small business side is they say, multi-sig is, you should only do multi-sig. Single sig is not secure, and if you're not willing to do that, they like almost overwhelm you into then going and buying MSTR instead. They say go buy MSTR. So I think like almost as an industry, we've kind of pushed too far into the paranoid multi-sig or bust, and so I'm kind of curious on your opinion for like the average person. Maybe their threat model doesn't include a government. Like single sig, self-custody, cold storage, you buy a single hardware wallet, you put it on steel is pretty fucking good, right?
Oh, it is good, yeah. I mean, that's certainly where I started with. It's before the HD wallet, so it was with Bitcoin Armory, which is you have 2 laptops and you take the network card out of one, and that's your hardware wallet. And it generates the seeds, which were a different standard at that time, and you write them down. And I think they were already fireproof backups, but they just were a different format. I think where things, and it was using, not multi-sig, but some kind of, what do you call that? Like a redundancy encoding, so that you can.
Was something like Shamir's or something like that?
The Shamir thing, but it was a custom one that they did. So anyway, you could say you wanted 2 or 3, and it would reconstruct to 1 seed. I mean, it's a 1 private key. So actually, it wasn't multi-sig, but it had the redundant backup. So that's another way to go. And I think the redundant backup is good because people will forget things if they hide them in clever places after a few years when you don't have to use it frequently.
Yeah, so keep 2 backups at least.
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah.
And then, like, if you're keeping it in your house or something, your house burns down, like, it's good to have it somewhere else.
Yeah, and the fireproof backup things are pretty reasonable to use as well, like the crypto steels.
Little steel plate washers. Okay, let's get into treasury companies, because I think most people in this room are aware that you're launching your own. These treasury companies, these large businesses, specifically, I mean, you have like MSTR and then you have everyone else. I don't believe any of the... I don't know of any of them that are actually doing self-custody. They're mostly using regulated custodians. Twofold, how should people that are trying to analyze these different stocks and whether or not they should buy them think about that risk? And second of all, how should officers of those companies think about that risk and moving forward? Should they be moving to better models, or is the current status quo sufficient?
I mean, I think what started them on a track of using custody providers is whatever they do, they have to get their public company audit firm, one of the big four typically, to be willing to give it a stamp of approval. And so that's a kind of defensive standards. So they're probably going to advise them to use a qualified custodian in a certain country with a certain set of licenses and audit of the custodian itself, right? But I have talked to public market treasury companies who are, looking at self-custody as well. So it's not something that they are insensitive to. And one thing that we like Blockstream, we've been working with some developing custody technology and working with licensed custodians to integrate that, is the concept of collaborative custody at the custodian level. So let's say that you're working with, two independent audited custodians and you make a 2 of 3 where you have one of the keys. That's already better than the single custodian because they have to collaborate with each other. So it wouldn't be just like one rogue, one company, one custody company with a bad practice or a rogue employee somehow managed to work over time and overcome it, and then your funds are gone. Because if that situation developed, the other company wouldn't, or you wouldn't, if you have to sign it. And I think the other thing is, we've got Anchor Watch in the room as well, is the decaying multi-sig concept, right? So you can start with a certain setup. So you could start with you having 2 of the keys and the custodians having the same key each or something. So if one of the custodians fails, you still have the redundancy and they can't do anything without you. And then to protect yourself, if you make an operational blunder, that over time that could swing to the other direction. So I think it's possible to provide a kind of safety net where you're protected from backup failures of your own and protected from reliance on third parties at the same time. So it can kind of fall back to relying on third parties to help you recover access if you make an operational mistake, but start from a point of view that you're in control de facto to start with.
I mean, you're kind of balancing, right? The risk you're balancing is on one side you have third-party risk, and then the other side you have operational self-custody risk, right? Yeah,
and I think, apart from those mechanisms, the thing that makes it somewhat dangerous to manage Bitcoin custody is if somebody gets access who shouldn't have access, it's gone, right? A Bitcoin transaction is final. You can go complain to developers and miners all you want. It's not getting undone. And that's a feature of the network. So you sort of have to accept that's how it works. And the only way around that really is the smart contract or Bitcoin script equivalent of time lock vaults, which you can just about do using Bitcoin script, but it has side effects. It's not ideal for backup. You basically have to pre-sign lots of transactions and then you've got to back those transactions up. But there are, in the covenant discussion, I think that is probably the most compelling reason to even want covenants is to have this kind of protection, because with that you can have custodians in the 2 of 3. And if the custodians conspire and move the Bitcoin and you weren't expecting it, you can cancel it, right? So if you're in a situation where you don't need to move money quickly, you can say, well, if all of the coins, if they move, I should have a week to cancel them. Then you can override that kind of thing and reassert control. So that sort of provides you with a bit of a safety net. And so there are companies working on sort of prototype versions of doing that with current Bitcoin script using lots of pre-signed transactions. And there are designs for doing it with, it doesn't really matter that much which covenant, they can mostly do that kind of thing.
I mean, I think in general, when it comes to large organizations or companies, like multi-sig is by far the gold standard. Like, I think it was important that we covered that for individuals and smaller businesses that are getting involved with Bitcoin, single sig is incredibly powerful and doesn't have as much of an operational burden to manage. But when you're talking about large organizations, I mean, just from the pure example of like MicroStrategy, like Sailor shouldn't have 600,000 Bitcoin on a cold card, right? Because then all of a sudden you enter territory where you have a single individual risk, where if that individual gets compromised or is malicious, then they can rug the entire organization. So I think multi-sig solves a lot of things. I do question how quickly the industry will actually move to these superior models. I mean, we've seen Sailor specifically, who is very much the leader of the movement, push back against it. And he is, and combined with that is this whole concept of proof of reserves. So I'm kind of curious on your opinion on whether or not basically the industry and investors should be demanding proof of reserves from these companies, and because I feel like that goes hand in hand with how you choose your custodians and how you handle custody.
Yeah, I mean, I think somebody was pushed on that. I think Coinbase tried to argue against that on some operational security reasons.
I know Saylor specifically said it causes operational security issues.
And I've seen Coinbase say the same thing, but I don't really see it. I mean, the block explorer is public. You can go find some high value coins and point at them. That gives you no advantage in seizing them or stealing them, right? So I don't really buy it. So, and I think it doesn't hurt. It only helps confidence in the company. I mean, they're paying for an audit statement. A block explorer link is very cheap, so they can just ask their custodian, or if they're cold storing it, provide the links. It's pretty easy and doesn't hurt. So and a few of them are doing it, so it shows it can be done without issue. Yeah.
I mean, even the country of El Salvador is doing it.
Yeah, there you go. Prime example.
But yeah, the ones that I know of is Metaplanet and XXI are doing it. I mean, do you think it's going to become more common, at least the proof of reserves piece?
Yeah, it could. I mean, I think, with a company like Metaplanet, they are doing a hybrid approach. So when they raise money, they put most of it into buying and cold storing Bitcoin, but they do, with a bit of it, they're doing call strategies. It's part of their advertised strategy. There's presumably some tax or specific reason for it. So, of course, they can't provide links for that because it's a kind of an option position on some platform, right? But for the cold stored Bitcoin, yeah, I think why not, really?
Love it. Should we rip some Q&A for the audience?
Yeah, okay.
First of all, can we get a huge round of applause for